Welcome to The Green Rush, a podcast about the intersection of cannabis, the capital markets, and culture. On a weekly basis, hosts Ann Donahoe and Louis Goldberg speak with the CEOs, financial experts, cultural icons, and generally interesting people moving the cannabis industry forward. Today, we're talking about CBD and hemp with a global leader in the industry. Kashif Shan is the CEO of Folium Biosciences, the largest vertically integrated producer, manufacturer, and distributor of hemp-derived phytocannabinoids. They've just received an investment from Australis Capital, and Kashif talks to Ann and Louis about how he's going to use that capital and what he sees for the future of hemp and CBD. Don't sit back, lean forward. And now let's learn something about CBD.
So Cash, welcome to the Green Rush.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So we've historically not done a ton of interviews talking about CBD and hemp-focused products and businesses. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you guys do at Folium?
Sure, absolutely. So Folium has been around for about 5 years. Founded the company in 2013. One of our basic premises that we operate under is that there are 137 cannabis molecules that exist in nature. Only one of them is psychoactive, and that's THC. And we're in the business of the other 136. So we think that while THC certainly has its applications, these other non-psychoactive cannabinoid molecules, whether it's CBD or CBG or CBC or CBN, have different applications and ones that we're interested in building a business around and exploring.
Cash, you just went through all of the different chemical components to hemp and to cannabis, and while most people are familiar generally with the idea of CBD and they're familiar with THC as the psychoactive component, you just listed a whole bunch of other things like CBN and others. Can you explain what their impact is on the body and what their uses are?
So it's a great question, and again, I want to be clear. I'm not a scientist. I'm a business person, and so I have a very layman's perspective on this. But a general way of viewing this is, if you think of CBD, CBD acts on the brain receptors, right? And then, so if you think of that as kind of a base cannabinoid, then we have these other cannabinoids like CBG, which is a much better analgesic than CBD is, and CBN, which is much better for anti-insomnia and acts as a pain relief. So, there's a lot of research and a lot of activity around CBD, which is where it should be to start. But we certainly feel that as time goes along, these other cannabinoids will come to the forefront as more research is done on them. And there isn't much research today compared to what exists around CBD. And these molecules are in secondary and tertiary positions as far as their abundance in nature. And so one of the things that we're doing is developing new plant genetics that are richer in these cannabinoids, so that in the future, when they are extracted, they're made more available. So I think that we're kind of at an inflection point when we look at cannabis molecules and their applications, and not only in OTC products, but also across the pharmaceutical space. And we're absolutely of the belief that in the next 10, 20 years, this is a whole new platform from which drug development will take place. And these molecules will have far-reaching implications across multiple indications that we deal with in society today.
I'm actually going to shift gears a little bit. We want to hear about your cannabis journey, but where this conversation is going, I think lends itself to a discussion about the Farm Bill and the recent passage of the Farm Bill. Everyone was over the moon excited, and the Farm Bill essentially effectively allows sales of industrial hemp-derived products across state lines, among other things. Can you talk a little bit about how that changes your business and does it affect these other phytocannabinoids, or is it just hemp-derived CBD?
So I think in broad terms, it will absolutely affect these other molecules because they will be derived from hemp, at least from our perspective. But as it pertains to how it changes our business today, we ship internationally to 32 countries right now. We are the only company in Colorado that's been audited by the CDPHE and has received our free sales certificates certifying our products. So we haven't had issues shipping into states around the country that allow the distribution of CBD. Certainly, we think the Farm Bill provides much more clarity than we've had in the past. It's a major step forward. I think that the FDA will now take a more active role in providing guidance as well.
Can we talk about the FDA for a second? Because, I think there's a confusion that when the Farm Bill passed, everybody was like, woohoo, CBD is legal. And the FDA went, slow down. So where does this stand? Like, is CBD formally legal, or is it still in a gray area?
No, I think it's legal. It's been legal. I think that, I don't think the government expected in 2013, when the initial pilot program was launched, that the primary products being derived from hemp would be these phytocannabinoids. I think that their thought process was it would be kind of akin to what was done in the past, which was more along the lines of textile, applications of industrial hemp. So, the FDA has jurisdiction over, ingestibles and dietary supplements and as well as drugs. So CBD products absolutely, are products that they will have an interest in, and they will want to ensure that products are being manufactured in a safe and regulated manner. And we welcome that. We think that as we move forward and these molecules move into the mainstream, there should be regulatory oversight. And to a large extent, we certainly want to lead the way in self-regulation and ensuring that we achieve the highest standards possible. So excuse me. So I think that that's to be expected. It's what you would expect in any industry that's maturing, and that's what's going to happen in this space too.
What if you could reshape the Farm Bill, or if you could do Farm Bill 2.0, what would that look like for you?
I hadn't thought about that, but
let us put you on the spot then.
Farm Bill 2.0 would exclusively say, it would exclusively say that only Folium Biosciences can supply cannabinoids across the United States, but that probably won't happen. So,
well, it depends on how much money you put in Trump's pocket. Then we can, then we'll talk.
No, I think that Farm Bill 2.0, I think this is a maturing process, right? I think that even today, there's so much that's misunderstood about the difference between marijuana and hemp-derived products. And that's at not only the political level, but also the general public. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen. And I think that Farm Bill 1.0, at least, is a major step forward in recognizing that there's significant opportunity here, that these are markets that we want to grow, that we want to be leading as a country. And I think that as we move forward, there'll be clearer definition and understanding behind psychoactive products and non-psychoactive products. I think that for the DEA to take the stance that they are, and we've had great interactions with them and have worked really hard to clarify our position and what we do, and they've been really open to that. And so I think that we're against illegal drug use, and having government agencies better understand that this is not the case is good for everybody. So as we move forward, I think that there'll be broader understanding, broader acceptance, and better education, and there'll be more adoption across many vertical channels, from human wellness to cosmetics to animal health. So we're really excited about what bodes for the future.
I definitely want to get into all these different types of products, but one of the things I want to ask you is, when people think of hemp products, they tend to think that there is no THC in it at all, and that is just not accurate. It's not a plant that is bred to have a high concentration of THC, but there is some. You guys have a unique extraction process to remove the THC from the hemp and keep it pure CBD or other formulations. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you've decided to go completely THC free? Because you don't need to be 100% clean.
That's correct. And if you don't mind, I'm going to back up just a little bit and address that question in two parts. So the first part of answering that question would be that we are big believers in what's called the entourage effect, or the full spectrum products. Mm-hmm. So we don't, for example, use isolate, which is purification of the extract to a single molecule at a pharmaceutical grade level. And so, we believe in the synergistic interaction of the terpenes, the lipids, the proteins, along with the cannabinoids, and we think that results in higher levels of efficacy than if you separate single molecules. We actually also believe that THC in small parts is conducive to that entourage effect, but the reality of the marketplace that exists today, and looking at it from a pragmatic perspective, is that and I think this year will be the critical year, as big box retailers like Costco, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens start adopting these products, there is very little interest on their part to put anything on the shelves that would have any levels of THC for obvious reasons, right? Security, liability. So, our ability to remove THC, and just to touch on that, the federal definition of hemp is any sativa L plant that has less than 0.3% THC in it. So when that biomass is extracted, the THC levels typically concentrate to somewhere between 1.5 to 2%. And so a lot of companies will address lowering those THC levels to less than 0.3 by diluting the product. What we do is we take a form of chromatography technology where we have media that selectively binds with the THC molecules and removes them from this full spectrum profile. So we're left with a full spectrum oil that's devoid of the THC down to 0.0%. And that's what we use then to either sell in bulk or to formulate other products from. And so I think that, again, when we look at this from not just a domestic perspective, but an international perspective, we have countries that we ship to today, like Japan, Malaysia, or the Middle East, where there's a zero tolerance threshold towards THC, but a significant level of interest in non-psychoactive cannabinoids. And so this presents a perfect solution to addressing those markets.
I have two follow-up questions. One is, from a U.S. perspective, are you hearing from the big box retailers or the CVSs and Walgreens of the world that they want this? Or are you anticipating that they will want this, a completely THC-free product on the shelves? And my follow-up is, Lewis wants to know what's done with all the THC that gets extracted.
Yeah, do you have like a massive stockpile somewhere that you're just kind of sitting on top of going,
So Lewis, my answer to you would be, you should definitely come by on Friday afternoons, because we have rangers everywhere. Right? No, on a serious note, if anybody from the MED is listening, that is absolutely not what happened JK, exactly. No, so to answer the second question first, is we actually have a protocol that the state had asked us to employ, whereby we dispose of the THC. We remove it from the columns in which it's captured. We mix it in with other products, and then we have a special a company that specializes in dangerous waste that comes by and picks up this on a weekly basis and disposes of it. Everything is videotaped and stored for audit if that ever comes to that. So that's what we do with the THC.
So no one can go around licking your garbage cans.
No, it doesn't really work out too well. Yeah.
That was like a me joke, by the way.
Yeah, no, and then in regards to the first question, I think that absolutely, like for example, Walmart.com already has CBD products on its website, and I think the way I'd answer this question is we recently had a new board member, our first outside board member, join the company. His name is JP Bilbray, and JP up until this year was the chairman and CEO of the Hershey Company.
Wow, congratulations. That's a get.
Oh yeah, thank you. No, he's an amazing guy. We're not just excited about his pedigree, but just his leadership and his experience are tremendous assets to us. And I've really enjoyed spending the time I have with him. But I think that if you look at his involvement in a relatively small company, right, 200 people, in the forefront of a greenfield opportunity, a burgeoning industry. I think that's really telling because obviously the majority of his contacts exist within big box retail. That's where Hershey would distribute its products. So I think it's really a good indicator of where the market is going, what the level of interest is, because it's massive. And there's no question, here we're dealing with a molecule that hasn't been present in our dietary intake for 80, 90 years. And people, I think it's kind of we're at a point where it's the perfect storm where people are exhausted with pharmaceuticals and all of the side effects that come from those, and are looking for safe alternative solutions to a myriad of issues, whether it's pain management or anxiety or sleep aid or even things as serious as epilepsy. And CBD, because as you guys know, each of us has an endocannabinoidal system, right? We're introducing products into the body that are native to the body, so there's no toxicity, you can't overdose, and there's no drug interaction. So, these are molecules that can help in all those areas without any of the side effects. So it's really an interesting time, and one that I think that when you have something that people take that works, that there's a viral effect to the adoption, and that's what we're seeing in the growth.
Can we talk about brand for a second? Because ultimately what you are is, at its core is, and I hate to use this word, but like somewhere like between a nutraceutical company and a consumer packaged goods company. So how do you define your brand? How do you communicate your brand? And how do you differentiate your brand? Because the space is underdeveloped, undereducated, and really crowded.
So I think the way we would define ourselves, and hopefully I don't get sued for this, is we kind of think of ourselves as Intel Inside, right? We're the chip that powers the brands, and whether so if you look at the demographics of our customers today, they kind of fall into two categories, right? So we have 50% of our customers are companies that buy our products in bulk, unfinished, right? So it's either bulk oil, water soluble powder, hydro PCR, different delivery systems we have that we can provide to them, from which they can then formulate products and develop products for their own markets. The other 50% of our customers, though, are companies that are in our sales and marketing companies that are looking for finished goods that they can deliver into their distribution systems. So from that perspective, what we try to do is build an ecosystem in which our customers can come into and really secure products across all the different verticals that we've talked about, to allow them to create a platform of sales for themselves. And really, when we look at this, we're now talking more about category management, and it's a new category, and developing products broadly across that category. That's kind of where we see ourselves, is we want you to focus as a customer on what you do best. And if what you do best is sales and marketing, we want to provide you with the products that allows you to go forward and do that as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
You have an arm of, it seems like a pretty robust arm of R&D within the company. What kind of technology, research, or products can we expect to see from you in 2019? Or not even 2019, just say in the future.
I think that's a great question. Again, I think that that will be driven to some extent by where demand comes from. And so I think it falls into two areas. The first is building better dose delivery systems that drive more bioavailability. I think that one of the things that we've always tried to do as a cornerstone of how we do business is develop products that work as efficiently as possible. Right? So you'll see a lot of products out there in the market today that provide a certain dosing or certain milligrams, certain amount of milligrams in the product. But what you have to marry that with now, I think, is smart, intelligent delivery systems, whether it's a nano-emulsion or other forms that provide more active into the body more efficiently. And that's absolutely where our focus is from an R&D perspective, because
So your R&D perspective is delivery system focused, or I just want to be clear, because I think about innovation all the time, and I don't see as much innovation in this industry, I think, as there could be. And I don't mean in hemp CBD, I mean, in the overall cannabis industry, I think people are so focused on yield and potency that they are missing the opportunity for real innovation. Maybe I'm just talking out my butt here, but where does this fit into your thesis?
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I think that, as these larger mainstream distribution channels like a Walmart or a CVS come online, they're going to demand higher standards, not only in GMP and production, but also in delivery. And so, as an industry, those are good things, right? Right now, these molecules are priced in a manner in which it's cost prohibitive to a certain segment of society, and we need to change that. And one of the ways we can change that is by improving delivery systems so that smaller dosing will deliver the same results or better than what people are getting from rudimentary delivery systems that are being utilized in the market today.
Being that all of this research is going into delivery systems, let's say cannabis gets rescheduled and or the States Acts pass or something big happens. Are there any plans for you guys to get into THC based products or does this technology apply to THC based products, or are you all hemp derived CBD all the time? That's going to be the focus for the next 10 years. Or is that an unfair question?
I mean, that too.
The question's fine. I think that we're not going to get into the business of THC. It's a very different business than the business we're in at many, many different levels. I think just to give you some examples, even if you look at cultivation, for example, the infrastructure required for THC cultivation is completely different than the infrastructure that we've built out for hemp-derived products. So I don't see us pivoting to that. Also, if you look at it kind of look at the scale at which we're building our systems, they don't necessarily even apply to THC-derived products because they're so highly regulated. A single company can only produce so much. So, for example, today we produce about 2,000 kilos of active per month. And we just closed on a new 110,000 square foot facility that will come online in March. We've had equipment under fabrication for the last several months that will be deployed in April. And by May, our capacity will increase to about 20,000 kilos of active per month. And when you start looking at those kinds of numbers, it's really not applicable to the marijuana or THC space because there's just the demand in within one entity isn't high enough to build that kind of infrastructure around. So the other part of that is, again, countries that we sell into today that have very little tolerance or interest in THC, we don't want to muddy the waters or create any confusion in the market as to what we do. We're clearly defined. We recognize that there's opportunities on the THC side, but we think that being disciplined and focused on what we do best is our best approach to being successful.
Let's pivot a little bit. We've been talking about the plant and the states, or the hemp bill and that kind of stuff, but we haven't really talked about you. And we're, just to remind everybody, we're talking with Kashif Shan, the CEO of Folium Biosciences. Kash, how did you get into this business? Like, what is your backstory? Tell us your personal journey.
So I appreciate you asking that question because there's a facet of this that I want to share with the audience that I think is important. But I'm a big believer in karma, right? And so sometimes in life, it's about being in the right place at the right time. And so in my case, my background, I was in the high-tech industry in the Bay Area for most of my career. I was very fortunate. I retired kind of in my mid-30s and was then in the real estate business. And so I was buying condominiums in the Bay Area, apartment buildings in the Bay Area and converting them condominiums or building high-density units. And so in the course of that business, a deal came across my desk for a mushroom farm in Gilroy, California. And
psilocybin or other?
Shiitakes.
Yeah, no, the real mushrooms, the ones you eat with chicken.
You can eat psilocybin with chicken.
I think we all agree at this point that we know you do.
No, actually, I don't. I haven't done. Yeah, but all right. My part of my job in this is to make really bad jokes.
That's all right. No problem. So anyway, so we got this deal. The deal comes across my desk, and obviously, I'm thinking, we could probably just demolish the farm and put up some townhouses or something like that. So we go out there, and I'm looking at this farm, and there's a ton of infrastructure. There's greenhouses, there's grow rooms, there's generators. And so I'm kind of talking to the team that's out there, and out loud, I asked the question, well, is there anything else that we could do with this before we pull all this down? And so this is the part where I want to just talk a little bit about who I am personally. So I'm the guy, I come from a very conservative family, a very conservative Muslim family, actually. And so I don't drink, smoke, I've never done drugs. And so I have no knowledge of this industry whatsoever. And so one of the guys that's there says, well, if we could grow medical marijuana here, that could be pretty good. And so I don't know anything about that. And he says, well, I know a dispensary owner in San Jose that could help us.
And when was this?
This is now in 2012. So this is about 6 years ago.
Okay, cool.
6.5 years.
This is really, by the way, we were chatting beforehand and you said, this isn't all that interesting. This is absolutely fascinating. Are you kidding me? This is awesome.
All right. Well, so I go out to have lunch with the guy, and and within 30 seconds, he's disillusioned me of any idea or thoughts that the city of Gilroy will let us grow medical marijuana in the city limits. So I'm like, dude, we're here. I'm here. You're here. We're having lunch. Tell me about your world. So the guy goes on and on for the next hour and a half, 2 hours about CBD. And again, this is 6.5 years ago. He was kind of a pioneer at the time, at least from my perspective. And so remember, I'm coming from my background in high tech, and I'm listening to him through that lens. And I apologize. I don't know whether you bleep things out, but in my mind, I'm thinking the guy's full of shit, right?
We don't bleep.
No, we don't.
We embrace
bleep.
the curse.
All right. Well, okay. Well, you can roll with it if you want. So, I'm thinking that there's no way this molecule exists that can do all the things that he says it can do, and that the pharmaceutical industry hasn't monetized this. But I'm intrigued enough to do one thing when I get home, which is to Google CBD. And if you Google CBD, you'll see, 50 years of published papers that absolutely corroborated everything that he was saying. And then you back then you get to see and understand why this molecule wasn't being utilized at the time. And so, I kind of had my entrepreneurial spirit, hat on, and I thought that there was a window of opportunity where, somebody could go into this business and if we could get big enough, fast enough, could be a pretty interesting opportunity. So as I'm out there educating myself, I'm on these forum boards, and you quickly saw the debate, even back then 6 years ago, from people that were saying that you couldn't extract CBD from hemp, traditional industrial hemp. It had to come from the marijuana plant because nature had designed the industrial hemp plant for its textile applications.
And you're thinking to yourself, bullshit.
No, I'm thinking to myself, I agree 100%. I absolutely recognize that nature had designed the marijuana plant for its medicinal applications. So the one thing that we did as far as connecting the dots, though, was I knew that I wasn't interested in going into the marijuana business, but I was really interested in going into the hemp business because not only was that not a regional business, not a domestic business, it could be a multinational business. So what we did was, from a foundational perspective, we took a strain of marijuana that was high in CBD and pretty high in THC, an AC/DC strain to be specific, and we, over the next year and a half, bred the THC levels down to where it qualified as hemp. So we now had a strain that had high levels of CBD. It qualified as industrial hemp under the definition by the federal government, but it had all these other attributes that we agreed and recognized were critical to efficacy: the terpenes, the lipids, the proteins, all the things that we've talked about. So that was kind of a foundational aspect of how we started the business. And for the first 2.5, 3 years, the inception of the business, we were 100% focused on developing our farming infrastructure to build supply into the demand that we were going to build in the future.
Can I ask what the conversation was like with your family? Like, Mom, Dad, I have to talk to you about something.
That is a great question, because I think you understand. I'm obviously from an Indo-Pak culture, right? And so, if we're not engineers or doctors, we're failures. So,
But you were an engineer, weren't you? I mean, you were.
I was not. I was not actually. I was more on the business side of things, but but still,
what a shame.
My parents, though, were very supportive because they were open to being educated, and it's pretty funny because now they'll be like, Beta, can you please send us some CBD? We need it for our friends, and it's pretty funny. They're very cool people. But the other part of what I wanted to say and this is more important, I think, is as we move into 2019, one of the guiding principles by which we want to build our business is this aspect of social commerce. And social commerce is a term that JP taught me, and it was something that was obviously integral to the foundation of Hershey, because Hershey, as you know, is all of its profits are built towards going to the Hershey Trust, which provides resources and housing for
Indigent kids, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, boys that are adopted and so forth, right? So I say this because I mentioned earlier, I'm a Muslim American, incredibly proud to be an American, incredibly proud of the opportunities that this country has afforded me, and so we're in a space where a lot of what we produce can help people in very real ways, right? And so one of the things that we want to accomplish this year, and that this is tied to our increase in capacity, allowing us to do this now, is to see what we can do, by aligning with veterans organizations to help provide product to veterans that deal with PTSD and other issues, to help them alleviate some of those issues. So I think as a Muslim American, I have a greater responsibility to be active in our community and to demonstrate that our religion, our culture is one which is additive to us as a nation, and that we're as proud of the service that our service members make and the sacrifices they make for us all as much as anybody is. So we're super excited about developing those programs this year and rolling them out.
Well, sorry, Louis.
We haven't done that in a long time. No, seriously, we haven't stepped on each other literally in a very long time. So, and you go ahead. I didn't mean to step on you.
Cash, your company actually caught my eye when I was reading New Cannabis Ventures, a must-read. Alan Brockstein is a friend of the pod, and he announced the deal. Australis Capital invested $3 million into your business. And for those who don't know, Australis is the spinoff of the Canadian powerhouse Aurora. Their U.S. spinoff, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about that deal? And is that the money is that money gonna fund the kind of expansion that you just talked about?
So the money that came in was in the form of a secondary offering. So I'm happy to report that we are a pretty successful business. We're profitable and we fund all of our expansions from our own revenue. So those funds actually came into the business and were distributed to investors that were interested in taking a little bit of money off the table and capitalizing on the valuation of the dollars that came in. So they never actually came into the business itself. But I will say that Scott Dowdy, who is the CEO of Australis, is a great friend of the company. He's a great guy, has a good vision for how he wants to build the fund, and what its objectives are. And our perspective on the dollar amount, we quite frankly didn't need the capital for anything, but we think that a strategic relationship with Australis makes sense for us. We think that their values align with ours, and we're excited about building the business with them in the future and having them be partners with us.
The last couple of years have seen this massive rush to go public. You see multi-state operators going up to Canada to list on the CSE. You actually see Canadian LPs coming down to the United States to list on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. Do you have any plans to go public in the next 2 years, 3 years? What is the future for you guys from a financial or capital markets perspective?
That's a loaded question. Never say never.
I have a loaded microphone, so you are facing a loaded microphone.
I think that people, there are a couple of reasons why people go to the capital markets, right? Obviously, raise capital, right? Another is that it can be an exit strategy for early founders or investors in companies. I don't think that's the pathway that we'll take. But again, never say never. We don't need to raise capital. We are profitable to the extent that we can fund all of our own expansion and provide dividends to our investors on a monthly basis today. And we're expecting our revenue to grow exponentially this year over what we did last year. So I don't think that's in our cards. Quite frankly, I've been through a few IPOs, and I'd rather stay focused on the business.
I thought you were saying I'd rather stick a fork in my eye.
Yeah.
Well, I was getting there, but you beat me to the punch, right? When you go public, I think that as a CEO, your role changes, and you're very much beholden to the reporting requirements and the investors in your business, which you should be. I don't know that I have an interest in going down that pathway. We don't really have a need, and I think that it would distract from what we're trying to accomplish.
Where do you see the biggest growth market for CBD? Is it beauty? Is it wellness? Is it veterinary? Where are you gonna focus your efforts this year?
I think we're going to focus on all three of those areas, quite frankly. And
I just picked those three. There could be more.
Yeah, no, there are more, but I think that what you're alluding to, though, and what we're recognizing as well, I think, is that, look, the reality is that we're in the first inning of a very long game, right? And these are early days, and so when you look at global adoption of these molecules across all those verticals that you mentioned and others, it's just so early. And so there's massive demand across all those channels. I think one of the things that you will see, though, this year is more contract manufacturers coming into the space that are credible, scalable, and that can design and deliver high quality products to help penetrate those markets better. As an example, we partnered with one of the premier manufacturers of cosmetic products in Korea to help us develop our CBD-based cosmetics products. So we have now face masks and eye serums and cold creams and some really cool products that we think reflect kind of quality product that we want to put in the marketplace, and is made by a partner that has extensive experience in these kinds of products. So again, I think that these things will mature just like the overall market will, and there are more and more companies that have a level of expertise that doesn't exist in the cannabis space that are willing to partner with companies in the space to produce better products.
So I want to get back to a couple of personal questions, because I was really enjoying the entrepreneur's journey there, and I have a two-part question. The first is, we all make mistakes, especially in the early days. I'd love to know about what your biggest mistake was, and as a follow-up question, I really want to get very personal here: Ginger or Marianne? Because I've been
definitely Ginger, but to the first question, there's no question that we've made mistakes.
Oh, and by the way, I disagree. I'm Marianne all the way.
Oh, yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, and I hate this question.
Well, the good news is
why do you hate this question? It's a great question.
Well, I was going to say we could go out and not have any conflict, right? But
yeah.
other than my wife would probably have an issue. So,
I imagine she would.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Right, sorry. So biggest mistake.
There have been a lot, so many. I couldn't even tell you. I think that it's a space in which there wasn't anybody to teach us what we didn't know. right? We really were pioneers because a lot of the guys that were in the space were on the THC side, and they had been underground guys that had been in the business, and so for us it was very difficult to align ourselves with professional, because we come from biotech and high tech and different kinds of backgrounds, and so that they're legal industries, right? So we absolutely made some mistakes in hiring, and I don't think they were mistakes. I think they were just, we didn't understand the psychology of the people that were in the space that existed. Because if you think about it, these are guys that just never trusted anybody because it wasn't in their DNA. They had grown up in a world where the minute you trusted somebody, you probably got screwed over. So I think that a lot of our mistakes were in the personnel area, and you kind of work your way through those. And then in other areas, it was more of just the challenges. Again, back in 5 years ago, there was very little awareness of CBD, and so our challenges were, as simple as securing buildings that we could work out of, where our landlords were open and willing to understand what we did. But the only thing I would say is this: you're absolutely going to make mistakes. There's no question about it, and sometimes they're big mistakes. I think the key is, how do you work through those mistakes? What do you learn? And I think the only thing that we did was we never accepted that any of our mistakes were fatal. They were all opportunities to learn, and we took those learnings and improved on how we did what we did. And so we'll continue to do that, because I think we're still making mistakes every day. So that would be my answer.
I've heard it compared to, and I think this is a Taylor Westism. Shay can correct me if I'm wrong, but that this industry is like building the plane while you're flying it, and that there's just not that blueprint for a business like this, a business that existed and thrived in the black market and is now all of a sudden kind of thrust into regulations and a real thriving green market industry. So no question there, just a comment. But
no, I think it's a great analogy.
And I think a lot of people have made a lot of mistakes, but to your point, to not see them as fatal, and to kind of learn from them and pivot is the sign of a maturing of the industry. So it's great to hear that. What do you think is the hardest part of your job right now?
Wow, that's another good question. So
thanks.
You guys are full of loaded.
No, they're leading questions.
I think that the next big challenge we have is, our business is going to scale this year, in ways that it hasn't before, and in ways, quite frankly, that I haven't experienced before. And so I think the biggest challenge for us is, how do we navigate through different types of challenges than we've had in the past? And I think and the answer to that question is by surrounding ourselves with people like JP and like Australis, trusted advisors that can help minimize the mistakes that we might make. I think that as you get bigger, your mistakes become more costly. And so to the extent that we can minimize those mistakes, and make sure that we're listening really well, and making sure that we make our decisions are as informed as possible before we make them is going to be critical. The international opportunity is also really, really big. We're you're not just seeing the U.S. change and become more open to these opportunities. You're seeing it on a global perspective, right? Mexico just legalized. Europe is obviously already legal. South Korea, Japan, some of these countries that we've mentioned, these are countries that you wouldn't expect to adopt these opportunities, but they are. And so, as we move forward, anybody that's done international expansion will tell you that going to any of these countries, you have to understand the culture, the distribution systems. They're all very different than how we operate here in the West. And so you have to identify local partners that can help you navigate through, those kinds of things. And so we're very fortunate in the partners that we have had in our international expansion. We hope that will continue as we move forward. But absolutely, there's some, I think that, scaling as we move forward, and bringing in people that can help us navigate the next level of the business is going to be critical to our success.
Cash, I have good news and I have bad news for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. The bad news is we're almost done. We have one more question.
That's so funny because that's good news to me.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, then forget it. All right. So we try and do a repeating segment every show called While You Were Sleeping. And the goal of this is to ask you, you're paying attention to the industry really broadly. The media tends to focus on a little bit of this entire industry. What do you think that the media is not covering? What's the most underreported story in the overall cannabis hemp industry?
I think that the most underreported story relates to what we do, because I think there's been so much focus on THC that, quite frankly, investment communities, and the media have failed to recognize that the larger, broader, global impact is from the non-psychoactive molecules, and that's worked out great for us because it's allowed us to continue to grow. But I think that as we move forward, and I think you're already starting to see companies that are in the space or new ventures that are coming into the space are pivoting more towards this side of the business because they're starting to recognize the global opportunity versus a regional opportunity. And so that's what I think is the most underreported aspect of the whole cannabis story. Is it's not just about THC, it's very much about these other molecules. And that will be, I think, the talking point in 2019 and 2020.
Cash, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Yeah, this was amazing.
And just one more chance.
It was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, and one more chance to plug. So we've been speaking with Kashif Shan, the CEO of Folium Biosciences. Check him out at foliumbiosciences.com. We'll have a link in our show notes. Anywhere else you want to plug? Twitter. You guys have a Twitter account at Folium Biosciences. Anywhere else?
Yeah, I apologize. I suck at that stuff. I don't even have a Facebook account. So no, I appreciate you guys having us on. I hope that I was a reasonable guest. I'm not great at these things. So I appreciate the patience of your audience. And again, we're really excited about what we do as we move forward and looking forward to making our products more available to more people.
If you want to chat with us, find us on Instagram and Twitter with the handles at KCSA_cannabis, as well as KCSA-cannabis.com, or drop us an email at greenrush@kcsa.com. Big, huge, sloppy thanks to Tiffany, to Nick, and to Shay for helping us get this show off the ground and helping us promote it. Don't forget to subscribe to The Green Rush in your favorite podcatcher. And Lewis, big sloppy thanks to you too.
Seriously? Ew. That's like ew.
One take, Shay. One take.
Cannabis.